If I may, I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for holding this hearing. You are right. This is an issue which is near and dear to both of our hearts, and I think it's a timely and very important hearing, and it's critical that we keep a spotlight on this. And I'll just say briefly as an opening that poachers with ties to global organized crime syndicates and violent armed groups continue to cross international borders to kill elephants and rhinos for their tusks and are better equipped than the park rangers who are charged to protect them. Park rangers have been ambushed, attacked, lost their lives in the line of duty after encountering poachers armed with weapons of war, military-grade weaponry, and technology. Last month, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service launched a campaign on social media when the agency crushed 1 ton of illegal ivory in New York City's Times Square to send a message to wildlife traffickers and raise awareness about the importance of these issues. Hashtag Ivory Crush was trending all over Twitter and Facebook, and I think it just is a reflection of how important people in our country, in the world, see this issue. Wildlife poaching and trafficking is a global problem, but one that has local solutions. This is not just a problem for African nations, it is also an American problem. We are the second largest market for illegal wildlife products like ivory and other precious goods. China recently announced it will crack down on illegal ivory trade, but has stated they will not act alone. They are looking to the United States and other nations to partner on the issue of illegal wildlife trafficking. This is a bipartisan issue that Congress can and should work together to put solutions in place. And that is my pledge to Senator Flake, to work with him in that fashion. The implementation plan released by the President's Task Force on Combating Wildlife Trafficking is an important step forward to developing solutions. And I'm particularly encouraged by efforts to use innovative technology in solving this problem. I look forward to working on legislation that would complement the administration's actions and supporting our African policies. So let me begin with you, if I may, Ms. Hemley. In 2012, Google donated $5 million to your organization to provide technology towards conservation and anti-poaching efforts through the Global Impact Awards. This technology assists in monitoring the habitats and trafficking routes of wildlife and additionally provides high-tech gear for rangers to ward off poachers. Has the technology been successful in reducing poaching capabilities?
Yes, Google did provide a generous grant for us to test and pilot some new technologies. You know, it's too soon to tell if we have found sort of solutions that can be scaled fully, but we are in some interesting tests in both Namibia and Nepal with drones to help with aerial monitoring, poaching, with testing, but it's not, that has often got a lot of attention, that aspect of the funding. There are a lot of other technologies that are as important to help out, and we need to look at all of them. Using infrared cameras in new ways, using new kinds of software for collecting and analyzing data has to all be integrated into the systems. And so we've got a variety of efforts underway to do that. We hope to know in the next 1 to 2 years what can be scaled and taken out to the field in a practical way. One of the challenges we've seen in these remote areas is just when you're using IT, getting cell phone coverage can often be a limitation. So we're talking to some of the companies, cell phone companies here in the U.S. to figure out ways you can get connectivity in the national parks that is critical to
communication. Talk to Google about that as well. Okay. Yeah. They have partners in that way. Okay, so so I think if you set the example, you can show how technology can work, then maybe we can find other companies.
Absolutely.
Partner with you. But that's just one. The next step comes when you go back again after proving the success of the use of technology and trying to get more wireless technology. Dr. Whittemire, technology is important, but science is important as well. So could you talk a little bit about the role which science plays in helping to create an anti-poaching environment?
Yes. So science, I mentioned the scientific data that we know to date. Science has been the foundation with which we've been able to actually measure the scale of this problem, key in on the critical points, the critical populations under threat, some of the trade aspects of trade, although there's a lot of black boxes in the trade routes. And science fundamental to continued monitoring and understanding, identifying where solutions are working and where they're failing. Without proper monitoring, we're not able to identify what we're having successes with. One technological solution I wanted to speak to that we're doing is through radio tracking data of animals. And right now, actually, on my computer, I can we can visualize elephants moving around in different parts of Africa. And we're using this to help deploy anti-poaching assets to identify when elephants enter danger zones. It's geofencing is what it's called when an elephant enters, say, a farm and starts crop raiding. We can actually get an GMS message on my cell phone that says this elephant entered this parcel and is likely crop raiding. These types of technologies help us to have rapid responses, be much more effective in our deployment of assets, especially when we're all asset limited. And so the technology has a big place, and we actually have leveraged private money to help develop these areas. So I agree, technology is a key.
So let's, science is the key. Your science, technology.
Yep,
Science.
sorry.
So I want to come back on the elephants, come back over to you, Ms. Hemley. We have the Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species. It gives us an opportunity to think about diplomacy, how we're going to work together. But yet, that convention was not successful in stopping the sale of 24 elephants from Zimbabwe to China. So talk about that and what needs to be done in order to ensure that there is an enforcement capacity here to protect these very precious resources that are diminishing by the day.
We were just talking about that issue actually on the taxi over here. That issue has us deeply concerned. The permit to export those 24 live young elephants was granted, and on the face of it, is supposedly in compliance with the CITES requirements. But in our view, other issues need to be considered. And we know that Zimbabwe has had very serious issues with elephant population numbers being reduced by poor management and poaching in the conservancies there. And so we share your concern, and we would like to see more done. And
okay, so give us a recommendation in terms of the enforcement tools that you would like to see put in place, or the enforcement tools that are already in place, and how you would like to see them enforced. How can you give us the instructions we need in order to act in a way that puts some real teeth?
Well, the Fish and Wildlife Service has, in fact, now has a ban in place for the import of sport trophies from Zimbabwe, which is a good thing because of that management. So they've taken the action because of the concerns there. Diplomatic pressure to Zimbabwe, we know it's a complicated probably equation diplomatically with that country now, but they cut a deal with China basically. And international pressure and publicity over this issue is certainly something we can do and help with. But the CITES requirement, in this case, we don't believe goes far enough into looking at the ultimate potential impact of the removal of those animals from the populations. And so,
okay, thank you. Thank you. Dr. Winnemeyer, Mr. Saunders, both of your organizations do tremendous work. Are there enough U.S. resources put into this effort? Does USAID have enough resource to help you to successfully advance the cause? Could each one of you talk about the resource issue here and what is needed in order to really make this into a successful program? Mr. Saunders.
Yes, I mean, speaking from the Savo Trust perspective, and probably on behalf of a lot of the other of our partners who work in a similar vein within what we call the sort of the human terrain, really, the working with the communities. The investment that the US government has made so far has been the major driver for developing new attitudes and a consensus on wildlife and its value within the communities. I think that one of the issues we deal with on a daily basis is that wildlife conservation is seen as a sort of a foreign luxury. And to overcome that, we've got to give solid reasons and work with our neighbours and our communities to show that it actually is a benefit. And the INL money has helped us dramatically in doing that. US Fish and Wildlife money has helped us do that with our engagement areas. In the area that we work in the Malkalako area, there hasn't been an elephant poached in that area for 11 months. To date. That area was the scene of the largest single poaching incident of elephants of its time, of 13 elephants shot at one go. And that was the last major one. And that's all been down to the ability to move assets into the area and change perspectives. But I think that the more that we can invest into that approach, the better it will be. And I'm very pleased to see that the USAID has a fund for Amboseli and Savo.
Dr. Whittemire, what would you recommend so that we can encourage U.S. agencies to do more in this area?
So I would start, in full disclosure, actually, we're not receiving U.S. funding in our activities.
Would you like to? Would you like to?
We would, certainly we would, yes. But
Well, you don't think there's enough funding?
I don't think there's enough funding. And I think particularly, I think we need resources that are, so USAID and US Fish and Wildlife Service have done excellent work with US funding on the ground in Africa. What we're seeing is, we're seeing evidence. I mentioned an example from the DEA that was successful in breaking up a criminal network in Kenya, actually. That type of expertise, the presidential executive order on wildlife trafficking helps to bring all that expertise together, but we haven't seen appropriations maybe put into the most effective agents to have effect. And so one of the concerns I think I'm hearing and that we're seeing is that maybe some of those individuals in the US government, they're very busy with other activities. The Department of Defense has a lot of responsibilities, and putting wildlife trafficking on their docket in a way that they'll actually engage with is difficult. And so possibly funding can help bring some of the expertise, give them the operational capacity to put their resources and expertise into wildlife trafficking, where if you just add it to their docket of objectives, it's number 57 on the list, they can't get to it. And so I think some of these appropriations, particularly on intelligence-based criminal network disruption, would be really helpful for us right now.
Thank you, Mr. Whittemire. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.